The rain fell hard against the quiet neighborhood, beating against rooftops and empty streets like tiny stones. Wind howled through the trees, bending weak branches back and forth in the darkness. Most of the houses had already turned off their lights hours ago. The entire street looked dead and silent under the stormy midnight sky. But one house near the end of the road still had a dim yellow light glowing through the window. Inside, Daniel Harper sat alone in an old chair beside the fireplace, staring at a cup of cold coffee in his hands. The television played softly in the background, but he was not really watching it. His tired eyes looked empty, almost lifeless. The house itself felt frozen in time. Dust covered the shelves. Family pictures hung on the walls untouched for years. One photo frame stood facing downward on a small table nearby. Daniel never looked at it anymore. 5 years earlier, tragedy had destroyed his life. Since then, he avoided neighbors, ignored phone calls, and rarely stepped outside unless necessary. People in town whispered about him sometimes. Some called him rude. Others called him broken. The truth was simpler. Daniel had stopped caring about the world a long time ago. A loud crack of thunder shook the windows. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, trying to ignore the storm outside. Then, knock, knock, knock. Daniel's eyes opened slowly. He frowned. At first, he thought maybe the wind had thrown something against the front porch. Then the sound came again. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was louder, faster, more desperate. Daniel stared toward the dark hallway leading to the front door. His heart tightened uneasily. Nobody visited his house. Nobody. Especially not at midnight. He stayed still for several seconds, listening carefully. The knocking stopped. Only rain and thunder remained. Daniel exhaled slowly and looked away, convincing himself to ignore it. But then, bang, bang, bang. The violent knocking exploded through the house. Please. A small voice cried from outside. Please help me. Daniel froze. A child. For a moment, he said nothing. His mind raced with warnings and fear. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe someone dangerous was outside waiting for him to open the door. The neighborhood had not been safe lately. Strange crimes had been reported on the news for weeks. Again the voice cried out, weaker this time. Please, don't leave me out here. Something painful moved inside Daniel's chest. A feeling he had buried years ago. Slowly, he stood up. The wooden floor creaked beneath his feet as he walked toward the door. The knocking had stopped now, replaced only by the sound of heavy rain. Daniel reached for the lock but hesitated. His hand trembled slightly. Then he pulled the door open. A freezing gust of wind rushed inside. Standing on the porch was a little girl no older than 8 years old. She was barefoot. Her thin clothes were soaked from the rain. Mud covered her legs and hands. Long dark hair clung to her frightened face. Her small body shook violently from cold and fear. Daniel immediately noticed bruises on her arms. Fresh bruises. The girl looked up at him with terrified eyes filled with tears. She looked like she had been running for hours. In her tiny shaking hands, she clutched a broken necklace tightly against her chest like it was the only thing protecting her. Please, she whispered weakly, struggling to breathe. They're looking for me. Daniel's blood turned cold. Before he could ask anything else, headlights suddenly appeared at the far end of the street. A dark vehicle slowly turned the corner, and the little girl's face filled with absolute terror. For one frozen second, neither of them moved. The rain pounded harder against the roof, and the dark car at the end of the street rolled slowly forward, its headlights cutting through the storm like searching eyes. The little girl gasped and stepped closer to Daniel, her small fingers clutching his coat sleeve. They found me, she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel's chest tightened. He looked down at her trembling body, then back at the car. Every warning in his mind screamed at him to shut the door. This was not his problem. He had spent years avoiding trouble, avoiding people, avoiding pain. He had built his lonely life carefully, brick by brick, so no one could break it again. Getting involved meant risk. Risk meant loss. And Daniel Harper had already lost everything once before. The car slowed for a moment in front of his house. Then, after what felt like forever, it kept moving down the street and disappeared into the darkness. The girl let out a shaky breath. Daniel looked at her bruised arms, her muddy feet, and the terror in her eyes. His jaw tightened. He should close the door. He should tell her to go to another house. Call the police and let them handle it. That would be the smart thing. Safe. But his body refused to move. Because suddenly, painfully, he remembered another little girl standing in the same doorway years ago. Emily. His daughter had been 7 years old, laughing as she wore her oversized raincoat and yellow rain boots. She had smiled up at him and asked if she could jump in puddles after the storm. That had been the last time he saw her smile. A drunk driver had taken her life later that night. And with her, Daniel's world had died too. The memory hit him so hard that his knees nearly weakened. He blinked quickly, forcing it away. The little girl before him was not Emily. But something in her frightened face cracked open a part of him he had locked away for years. "Please," she whispered again. Daniel swallowed hard. Then, without speaking, he stepped aside. The girl rushed inside. The warmth of the house wrapped around her, but her body still shook violently. Water dripped onto the wooden floor beneath her bare feet. Daniel shut the door quickly and locked it. For several moments, silence filled the room except for the storm outside. The girl stood near the wall, breathing fast, like a trapped animal waiting to be attacked. Daniel studied her carefully. She looked no older than 8. Her face was pale with fear. Dirt streaked her cheeks, and bruises marked her thin arms. But one thing caught his attention most. The broken necklace clenched tightly in her hand. Her fingers held it so hard her knuckles had turned white. It looked old, silver, with half a small heart-shaped charm hanging from its chain. Daniel frowned. "Where are your parents?" he asked quietly. The girl's eyes widened with panic. She shook her head fast. "I can't tell." Her voice trembled so badly that the words almost disappeared. Daniel's suspicion rose. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then softly said, "Lily." He nodded slowly. "Lily, we should call the police." The reaction was instant. Her whole body stiffened. "No." The scream burst from her so suddenly that Daniel stepped back. Tears rushed to her eyes. "No police," she said again, shaking violently now. "Please, please don't call them." Daniel stared at her. Why would a child fear the police? Unless she had done something wrong. Or worse, unless whoever was chasing her had reason to fear them. His mind raced. For weeks, the local news had been filled with reports of missing people. Strange disappearances. Late-night break-ins. Police had no answers. And now this terrified child had appeared at his door in the middle of a storm. Every instinct told him this was dangerous. He should send her away. Right now. Before whatever nightmare followed her reached his doorstep. Daniel looked toward the front door. Then back at Lily. She stood there soaked and shaking, clutching that broken necklace like it was the only thing keeping her alive. And in her wide, terrified eyes, he saw something he had not seen in years. The same helpless fear Emily had worn the day she begged him not to leave for work during that final storm. His chest ached sharply. He could not do it again. Could not turn away another frightened child. His voice softened. "You can stay tonight," he said quietly. Lily looked up, stunned. "Just tonight," he added quickly, as if saying less would protect him from what he was feeling. Relief flooded her small face. For the first time, some of the fear faded from her eyes. Daniel turned toward the hallway. "There's a blanket in the guest room." He took 2 steps before stopping. Slowly, he glanced back at the broken necklace in her hand. Something about it felt strangely familiar. And deep in his gut, a cold feeling twisted. This girl had not reached his house by accident. Something much darker had brought her here. And Daniel feared his quiet, empty life was about to change forever. The storm outside continued through the night. Rain tapped against the windows while thunder rumbled far away in the dark sky. Inside the old house, the fire in the fireplace crackled softly, filling the living room with a weak orange glow. Lily sat carefully at the edge of the couch, wrapped tightly in a thick blanket Daniel had given her. Her wet hair still clung to her face, and her small hands refused to let go of the broken necklace. Daniel stood nearby holding 2 cups of hot tea. For a moment, he simply watched her quietly. She looked exhausted. Not just tired, but terrified deep inside. Like someone who had seen something no child should ever see. Daniel handed her a cup slowly. "Careful," he said. "It's hot." Lily nodded softly and held the cup with shaky hands. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Only the sound of rain filled the silence. Finally, Daniel sat down across from her. "You said someone was looking for you," he said carefully. "Who?" Lily lowered her eyes immediately. Her fingers tightened around the necklace again. "The bad men," she whispered. Daniel frowned. "What bad men?" Her breathing became uneven. "It was supposed to stay hidden," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Mom said they could never find it." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Find what?" Lily shook her head fast. "I don't know." Tears slowly filled her eyes. "She just told me to run." Daniel stayed silent, letting her continue at her own pace. Lily stared into the fire as if replaying terrible memories in her mind. "We lived in a house outside the city," she whispered. "It was old, far away from people." Her voice trembled harder now. "Mom always kept the doors locked. She always looked scared." Daniel listened carefully. "She told me never to answer the windows," Lily continued. "Never go outside alone. Never tell strangers our names." A cold feeling slowly crawled into Daniel's chest. This was bigger than he thought. Much bigger. "What happened tonight?" he asked quietly. Lily's face suddenly lost all color. Her body stiffened. Daniel immediately noticed the fear in her eyes growing again. "They came back," she whispered. The room suddenly felt colder. "Who came back?" "The men." Her lips trembled badly now. "I heard shouting downstairs, and glass breaking." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Mom pushed me into the closet and told me not to make a sound." Daniel's chest tightened painfully as he listened. "She was crying," Lily continued. "She held my face and told me to run if anything happened." Lily's small voice cracked apart. She said, "Don't look back no matter what you hear." Daniel swallowed hard. For a moment, he could almost picture the terrified mother trying desperately to save her child. "What happened next?" he asked gently. Lily stared down at the floor. "I heard screaming." The words barely escaped her mouth. Daniel felt chills spread through his body. "Then I heard loud footsteps," she whispered. "The bad men were looking everywhere." She began shaking harder. One of them said they had to find something before the police did. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "Find something." His gaze slowly dropped toward the broken necklace in Lily's hands. Could that be what they were searching for? Lily wiped tears from her cheeks. "When the house became quiet, I climbed out the window and ran into the woods." She looked down at her bruised feet. "I kept running until I saw your house." Daniel leaned back slowly. His mind raced with questions. This sounded less like a family problem, and more like organized crime. Maybe even murder. The television suddenly interrupted the silence. "Breaking news tonight," the reporter said urgently from the screen. Daniel and Lily both looked toward the TV. A picture of a woman appeared beside the reporter. Daniel froze. The woman looked tired but kind, with dark hair and worried eyes. "Authorities continue searching for missing local woman Sarah Bennett," the reporter said. "Sources believe she may have information connected to a growing criminal investigation involving several dangerous individuals." Lily gasped sharply. The cup nearly slipped from her hands. "Mom." Daniel turned toward her instantly. Lily stared at the screen in horror. "That's my mom." The room fell silent. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Everything suddenly became real. This child was connected to a missing woman already tied to dangerous criminals. Whatever had happened tonight was no accident. And now Lily was sitting inside his house. Thunder shook the windows again. Then, a pair of headlights slowly passed across the living room wall. Daniel immediately stood up. His heart began pounding hard. Outside, a dark vehicle rolled slowly past the house. Too slowly. Like someone watching. Daniel stepped closer to the window but stayed hidden behind the curtain. The vehicle paused near the mailbox for several seconds, then continued down the street. But Daniel noticed something that made his blood run cold. The car's lights switched off before it disappeared around the corner. Lily's frightened voice trembled behind him. "They found me again, didn't they?" Daniel didn't answer right away, because deep down, he feared she was right. And for the first time in years, Daniel Harper realized danger had entered his home, and it was no longer possible to walk away from it. The house no longer felt safe. Every sound seemed loud now. The ticking clock in the hallway. The rain hitting the windows. The wind moving through the trees outside. Daniel stood near the living room curtain, watching the empty street carefully. The dark vehicle had disappeared several minutes ago, but an uneasy feeling remained deep inside him. Someone had been watching the house. He was sure of it. Behind him, Lily sat quietly on the couch, wrapped tightly in the blanket. Her small eyes looked exhausted, but fear still kept her awake. Daniel glanced toward her. "Try to rest," he said softly. Lily nodded, though she clearly could not sleep. Daniel walked into the kitchen and filled a glass of water, but his thoughts would not slow down. The missing mother. The violent men. The necklace. Something connected all of it. And whatever it was, dangerous people were willing to kill for it. His eyes slowly moved toward the broken silver necklace lying beside Lily now. For the first time since arriving, she had loosened her grip on it slightly. Daniel stared at the cracked heart-shaped charm carefully. Then a strange memory surfaced in his mind. Years ago, before leaving his old job as a mechanic, he had once repaired a small hidden compartment inside expensive jewelry for a wealthy customer. A compartment invisible from the outside. His heartbeat quickened. Slowly, Daniel picked up the necklace. Lily immediately looked nervous. "Don't break it," she whispered quickly. "It was my mom's." Daniel nodded gently. "I won't." He carried it beneath the kitchen light and studied it closely. The silver heart looked damaged, but there was a tiny line along one edge. Almost like it could open. Daniel carefully pressed his thumb against it. Click. The small charm suddenly popped open. Lily gasped. Inside was something tiny folded tightly beneath the metal cover. Daniel carefully removed it. It was a small memory card. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Daniel's stomach twisted. This was what the men were searching for. Lily looked confused. "What is it?" Daniel stared at the card silently. "Something very dangerous," he said quietly. Fear returned to Lily's face immediately. Daniel quickly closed the necklace again and handed it back to her. "Did your mother ever mention this?" Lily shook her head. "She just said I could never lose the necklace." Daniel's mind raced. A missing woman connected to criminals. A hidden memory card. This was not random anymore. Sarah Bennett had uncovered something important. Something powerful people wanted buried forever. Suddenly, the house phone rang loudly. Both of them jumped. The sharp sound echoed through the silent house. Daniel slowly turned toward the phone sitting on the wall. Ring. 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 Lily looked terrified again. Daniel stepped forward cautiously and answered. "Hello." Silence. Only breathing. Slow, heavy breathing. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" The line suddenly disconnected. A cold chill spread through the room. Lily's voice trembled. Was it them? Daniel did not answer, because deep down, he already knew. Hours passed slowly. Daniel locked every door and window in the house. He even pulled an old baseball bat from the closet near the hallway. Outside, the storm finally began to weaken, but the silence afterwards somehow felt even worse. Near midnight, Lily finally fell asleep on the couch. Daniel sat nearby in an old chair, unable to rest. His tired eyes stayed fixed on the windows. Then, crunch. A sound outside. Daniel froze instantly. Another crunch followed near the back of the house. Footsteps. Someone was outside. Daniel stood slowly, gripping the baseball bat tightly. The footsteps moved carefully across the wet grass. Then stopped. Silence. Daniel's pulse pounded inside his ears. Suddenly, bang! The back door shook violently. Lily screamed awake. Another loud hit slammed against the door. "Stay down." Daniel shouted. The door handle twisted hard. Someone was trying to break in. Daniel rushed toward the kitchen just as another violent crash hit the door. Wood cracked loudly. Lily cried in terror behind him. For one horrifying moment, Daniel saw the weak lock beginning to split apart. Adrenaline exploded through his body. Not again. He had failed to protect his family once before. He would not fail this child too. Daniel shoved a heavy table against the door just as another impact slammed into it from outside. The entire frame rattled violently. Then, police sirens sounded somewhere nearby in the distance. Everything outside suddenly went quiet. The footsteps hurried away into the darkness. Daniel stood frozen, breathing heavily. Rainwater slowly leaked beneath the damaged door. For several seconds, the house remained completely silent again. Then Lily ran toward him. Without thinking, she wrapped her arms tightly around him, shaking uncontrollably. Daniel froze in surprise. He had not held anyone like this in years. Slowly, carefully, he placed one hand against her back. "It's okay," he whispered, though his own voice shook slightly. "You're safe." But even as he said the words, Daniel knew the truth. Neither of them was safe anymore, because whoever was hunting Lily had now found the house, and they would almost certainly come back. The night had finally grown quiet. The storm had moved far away, leaving only soft wind brushing against the windows. Inside the house, the broken silence felt different now, less frightening, more calm. Daniel sat on the old couch with a small blanket wrapped around Lily's shoulders. She had finally stopped shaking, though her eyes still carried fear that had not fully left her. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Only the soft ticking of the wall clock filled the room. Daniel looked at her quietly. Something had changed inside him. He could feel it. This child, this small, frightened girl, was no longer just a stranger who knocked on his door. Somewhere in the middle of fear and danger, she had become something else. Something he had lost years ago. A reason to care. Lily shifted slightly and looked up at him. "Are you going to leave me too?" she asked suddenly. Her voice was soft, but it carried a deep fear. Daniel felt his chest tighten. For a moment, he did not answer. Because that question, it hit something buried deep inside him. Memories came back again. His daughter, Emily, sitting in this same room long ago, asking him not to go to work that day. Smiling. Trusting him completely. And then, silence forever. Daniel closed his eyes for a second, forcing the pain down. When he opened them again, he looked at Lily with a calm but steady expression. "No," he said quietly. "I am not going anywhere." Lily studied his face carefully, as if trying to decide if she could believe him. Slowly, she nodded. That small moment created something fragile between them. Trust. Hours passed. Lily eventually fell asleep on the couch, curled up tightly under the blanket. Her breathing finally became steady. Daniel stayed awake. He sat in the chair nearby, just watching her. And for the first time in years, he noticed something strange. Peace. Not in the world outside, but inside him. He studied her face as she slept. The same softness. The same innocence. And suddenly, it hit him hard. She reminded him of Emily. Not just in age, but in the way she trusted him now, even after everything she had been through. A faint, almost forgotten smile touched Daniel's face. It was weak, but it was real. He had not smiled like that in years. Morning came slowly. Soft sunlight slipped through the curtains, replacing the darkness of the night. Lily woke up rubbing her eyes. For a moment, she looked confused, then remembered everything. Fear returned to her face. Daniel noticed immediately. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're safe here right now." Lily sat up slowly. After a pause, she began speaking quietly. "My mom used to sing in the morning," she said, "before everything changed." Her voice was soft, filled with memories. She used to make pancakes and laugh a lot. Daniel listened carefully. For the first time, Lily was not speaking in fear. She was speaking from memory. From love. What was she like? Daniel asked gently. Lily smiled faintly. She was strong, she said. Even when she was scared, she tried not to show it. Then her smile faded. "But I think she's gone now." Her words fell like heavy stones in the quiet room. Daniel's heart sank. "Why do you think that?" he asked carefully. Lily lowered her head. "Because she told me to run like she knew she wouldn't come back," she whispered. Silence filled the room again. Daniel stood up slowly and walked toward the window. Outside, the world looked normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. He turned back to her. "We will find out the truth," he said firmly. Lily looked at him. "But what if the police don't help?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. Because deep down, he had started thinking the same thing. The system might not be safe. If powerful people were involved, even authorities could be dangerous. Still, he spoke carefully. Then we don't trust the wrong people, he said. He reached for the phone. After a pause, he tried dialing. No answer. Then another number. Busy signal. Then silence. Daniel slowly lowered the phone. His expression darkened. Lily noticed. What happened? She asked nervously. Daniel did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the table and placed the broken necklace beside him. This is not just about your mother, he said quietly. It's about something bigger. Lily looked scared again. Daniel knelt down in front of her so they were eye level. Listen to me, he said firmly but gently. From now on, you are not alone. Lily's eyes filled with tears. You mean it, she whispered. Daniel nodded. I promise. That word hung in the air. A promise he had not made in years. And this time, he meant it completely. Lily suddenly leaned forward and hugged him tightly. It was small, but real. Daniel froze for a moment. Then slowly, carefully, he placed his arms around her. Something inside him broke open. Not in pain this time, but in healing. Because for the first time in years, Daniel Harper was no longer just surviving. He was protecting someone again. And he was willing to risk everything to make sure she survived. The house felt unusually still that morning. No rain. No wind. Just a heavy silence that pressed against the walls like something unseen was waiting. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, staring at the broken necklace placed in front of him. Lily sat across from him, quietly eating a small piece of bread he had given her, though her eyes kept drifting to his face. Something in Daniel had changed overnight. He could feel it clearly now. This was no longer just about protecting a child. It was about truth. And something inside him told him that truth had been waiting for him for years. Slowly, Daniel picked up the necklace again. He studied it carefully under the morning light. This time, he noticed something he had missed before. A tiny engraved mark on the inside of the silver charm. A symbol. It was faint, but familiar. His breath slowed. His mind pulled him back to the past. Years ago. The day everything changed. The night his wife and daughter died in a so-called accident. But it was never just an accident. The police report had been too quick. Too clean. No real answers. Just silence. And now, this symbol. He had seen it once before. On a file he was never supposed to see at the hospital records office, linked to a group involved in illegal operations, cover-ups, and disappearances. His hands slowly tightened. No, he whispered under his breath. Lily looked up immediately. What is it? She asked nervously. Daniel didn't answer right away. His mind was racing. Because everything was connecting now. The missing woman. Sarah Bennett. The broken necklace. The criminals chasing her. And his own past. Slowly, he stood up and walked to an old locked drawer in the corner of the house. He had not opened it in years. Not since that day. With a shaky breath, he unlocked it. Inside were old papers. Clippings. Documents he had secretly collected over the years, trying to understand what truly happened to his family. He spread them across the table. Lily stood beside him quietly, confused and scared. Daniel's finger stopped on one file. A photograph. It showed the same symbol. The same group name hidden in coded reports. His voice broke slightly. This is them, he said. Lily looked at the paper. What is it? Daniel swallowed hard. The people who destroyed my family. His voice lowered. And the same people your mother was fighting. Silence. The truth hit the room like a heavy storm. Lily stepped back slowly. No, she whispered. Mom was just a teacher. Daniel shook his head. She was involved in something bigger, he said softly. Something dangerous. Lily's eyes filled with tears again. But why us? She asked. Daniel looked at her. And for the first time, he understood something deeply painful. This wasn't random, he said quietly. You didn't come here by accident. He paused. Fate brought you here. Lily shook her head as if she didn't want to believe it. But before either of them could speak again, a loud engine sound came from outside. Daniel froze instantly. His head snapped toward the window. A black vehicle slowly appeared on the street. This time, it didn't pass. It stopped. Right in front of the house. Daniel's heart dropped. They found us, he whispered. Lily grabbed his hand tightly. Fear returned instantly, but this time, so did something else. Courage. Daniel looked at her. The same fear he had seen before was still there. But now, she was not running. She was staying. Footsteps approached outside. Slow. Heavy. Daniel moved quickly, pulling Lily behind him. He grabbed the folder of documents. This was it. The truth he had been searching for. And now, they had come to silence it. A loud knock hit the door. Open up. A rough voice demanded. Daniel looked at Lily. His mind raced. Run, or expose everything. If he ran, the truth might die with him. If he stayed, he might lose everything. Lily tugged his sleeve. Her voice was small but firm. Don't let them take it, she whispered. Daniel looked at her. Something inside him shifted. Fear turned into something stronger. Determination. He nodded slowly. Stay behind me, he said. He opened the back window slightly and quickly sent a hidden copy of the documents through his phone, encrypted, already set to send to a trusted journalist he once knew. Then he turned back. The banging on the door grew louder. Cracks formed in the wood. Daniel took a deep breath. He was no longer just a broken man hiding from the world. He was a father protecting a child, and a man standing against the truth he had buried for years. The door shook violently again. But this time, Daniel did not step back. Lily held his hand tightly. Together, they stood ready. Because whatever came next, there was no turning away now. The night returned like a shadow. Dark clouds covered the sky again, and a cold wind swept through the empty street. The house that once felt like a fragile shelter now felt like a target. Inside, Daniel stood near the front door, breathing slowly but heavily. Lily stood behind him, holding onto his shirt with both hands. Her face was pale, but she was no longer just terrified. She was ready to stay. In Daniel's hand was the folder of evidence. Everything he had sent earlier had already reached the journalist and trusted authorities. Now it was out of his control. But that also meant something else. The criminals had nothing left to lose. A loud engine roared outside. Multiple vehicles. Daniel's eyes narrowed. They are here, he whispered. Lily's grip tightened. Footsteps came fast this time, no longer careful, no longer hidden. The front yard filled with harsh light as several black vehicles surrounded the house. Daniel's heart pounded hard, but he did not move back. A loud voice shouted from outside. Give us the girl and the evidence. Now. The window shattered suddenly. Glass exploded into the room. Lily screamed and dropped to the floor. Daniel immediately covered her with his body as more objects were thrown inside. The attackers were not waiting anymore. They were finishing it. Daniel grabbed a heavy wooden chair and smashed it against the side window where someone was trying to climb in. A man fell back outside with a shout. Stay behind me. Daniel ordered. Lily shook her head, tears in her eyes. I'm not leaving you, she cried. Those words hit Daniel deeply, because for the first time in years, someone refused to abandon him. Outside, sirens suddenly echoed in the distance. Police. News vans. Lights were flashing down the street. The evidence had reached the right hands. And now everything was moving fast. The criminals panicked. They sent it out, one of them shouted. The tone changed immediately. Confusion. Fear. Anger. Daniel realized it instantly. This was the turning point. The criminals were no longer controlling the situation. But they were still dangerous. One of them broke through the back door. Daniel rushed forward without hesitation, blocking the entrance. A violent struggle followed. Furniture crashed. Wood cracked. Daniel was hit hard but refused to fall. All he could think about was Lily. Behind him, she screamed his name. Daniel. That moment gave him strength. He pushed the attacker back and locked the door quickly, breathing heavily. His body ached, but he stayed standing. Outside, police lights flooded the area. Commands were shouted. The criminals began to retreat, realizing they had lost control. Some tried to escape through the back streets. Others were caught immediately as officers moved in. The organization was collapsing in real time. But inside the house, the danger was not fully gone yet. One last man remained inside. He grabbed Lily suddenly. She screamed. Daniel froze for half a second. That was all it took. He ran forward with everything he had left, hitting the man hard and freeing Lily. They both fell to the floor. A loud gunshot echoed outside, but it missed, hitting the wall instead. Daniel felt a sharp pain in his side. He staggered. Lily screamed louder now, grabbing him. "Don't go," she cried. Daniel knelt slowly, breathing heavily. Blood spread on his shirt. But he forced a small smile. "It's okay," he whispered. Police finally stormed inside. The last attacker was taken down. The room filled with shouting, footsteps, and urgency. The danger was finally ending. Daniel's vision blurred slightly. Lily held his face with both hands, crying uncontrollably. "You promised," she said brokenly. "You said you wouldn't leave me." Daniel looked at her gently. And despite the pain, he nodded. "I'm still here," he said softly. Officers rushed to him, calling for medical help. The criminals were being arrested outside. The network was falling apart as news of the exposed truth spread rapidly. But in that moment, none of that mattered to Lily. She refused to let go of his hand. Even as they tried to pull her away, she held on tightly. "No," she cried. "I'm staying with him." Daniel squeezed her hand weakly. And for a moment, everything slowed. Sirens, voices, chaos, all of it faded. Because what remained was simple. A broken man who finally found something worth protecting. And a little girl who refused to lose him. As the lights of emergency crews filled the house, Daniel's eyes slowly began to close, leaving the next moment uncertain. But one truth was already clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. The first light of morning slowly spread across the sky. For the first time in many days, the air felt calm. No sirens. No shouting. No fear in the distance. Just quiet peace settling over the neighborhood like a soft blanket. Inside the house, everything was still. Daniel lay in a hospital bed placed in the living room. His injuries had been treated, and the doctors had said he was stable. Weak, but alive. Beside him sat Lily. She had not moved from his side all night. Her small hands still held onto his fingers, as if afraid he might disappear if she let go. The truth had already come out. The evidence Daniel sent had exposed everything. The criminal network had been destroyed. Arrests were made across the city. The missing woman, Lily's mother, Sarah Bennett, had been found too late to survive, but her truth was finally honored. She had been trying to expose corruption that reached powerful people. And because of her courage, everything changed. Lily looked down quietly. Tears filled her eyes, but this time there was no panic. Only sadness and understanding. "She tried to protect me," Lily whispered. Daniel slowly turned his head toward her. His voice was weak, but calm. "She did," he said softly. "And she succeeded." Silence filled the room. Not the heavy silence of fear like before, but something different. Peace. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. For years, he had lived inside pain. He had shut the world out after losing his own daughter. He believed his life had ended long ago. But now, something inside him felt different. Lighter. Because in saving Lily, he had somehow saved himself too. He slowly looked at her again. "You're not alone anymore," he said gently. Lily's lips trembled. "Where will I go?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked around the quiet house. The same house that once felt empty, broken, and full of memories he could not face. Now it felt different. Alive again. Not because the walls had changed, but because someone had returned life to it. He squeezed her hand gently. "You'll stay here," he said. "If you want." Lily stared at him. "Really?" Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "Yes." That one word changed everything. Lily slowly leaned forward and hugged him carefully, as if afraid it was still a dream. Daniel closed his eyes as he hugged her back. And for the first time in years, he did not feel like a broken man. He felt like someone who still had a reason to live. Days passed. The house no longer felt empty. There were small sounds again. Footsteps in the hallway. Soft laughter in the morning. Warm light in the kitchen. Lily had started calling him uncle at first, but one evening, she paused and whispered something new. "Can I call you Dad?" Daniel froze. His heart tightened. He looked at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "Yes," he said quietly. That night, the house looked the same as it once did years ago, but it felt completely different. Warm, safe, alive. Daniel stood at the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft orange light. Behind him, Lily sat on the couch, reading a book with a small smile on her face. And in that moment, Daniel finally understood something simple but powerful. Life does not always give second chances. Sometimes, it sends broken people into each other's lives at the perfect moment. To heal, to forgive, to begin again. And sometimes, one small knock at midnight can change everything forever.